What's going on, YouTube? I'm back. It's been a minute, man. I've been doing a lot of schoolwork, getting prepped and all this seminary stuff. Man, I don't want to get into all that. I'm back, and I want to get these videos started coming out, punching them out more consistently. But for today, I have a video. I have a weird glare, but I'm glad to take them off. Today, I have a video about a YouTuber from another one of my videos commented just saying, can you give me some concrete evidence, historical evidence to back up some of this biblical narrative, because it's a lot to deal with, and I want to do that right now to the best of my ability. And this is one of my favorite topics, so if I get a little bit excited, you gotta give me a little bit of a break on that. But from the get-go, I want to say, especially with the Old Testament narrative, and even getting into the New, especially with the Old Testament though, the major consistent now this hasn't been stuff as of late, but really back in the day when the historicity of the Old Testament was in question more, they would, it was always, later people had to have written that book because of the prophecies and all the things that go on. They always, this consensus was people born way after these events just made up a story from oral tradition, but that really does not fit, because the way that the Old Testament is written, there are so much cultural complexities that go on. It really fits better if someone from that time would have written that book. If I'm trying to sound like George Washington, trying to write like some old English poet like Shakespeare or something like that, you'll be able to sniff it out quickly, because that isn't my culture. And if I'm trying to write like I'm from that culture, it isn't going to work. With this, you can see that it was written from that cultural time, and there are so many archaeological discoveries that show that, like the Nuzi tablets, the Mari tablets, that show things that were doubted severely, like they doubted that camels were used at the times of Abraham, but they found different tablets that supported, like the Nuzi tablets, that supported, hey, these people were using camels at this time. They were already domesticated. And Nuzi tablets also showed the cultural similarities between stuff in the Old Testament, and then, these are extra biblical evidences, as they call them, archaeological discoveries that show that the biblical authors were living just like other people of that time. So you can see how the cultures are so similar. Things like a barren wife having a midwife, all the death rituals, all the ceremonies, they're so similar to other cultures. It just shows that the Old Testament was written when it says it was. And another cool find, and I want to say this now, I'm not gonna. It's so many, I can't name everything because I don't want these videos to be too long. Because I know our new culture, man, attention spans ain't that long, so I don't want to give too many. But the walls of Jericho, fascinating archaeological discovery. At this place, there is, and I have it here, John Garstang was one of the first ones to be there to look at it, and he supports more of a biblical worldview. I don't know much about this guy, but the way he describes Jericho shows more of what the biblical story would say. And always when there's anything that might prove the Bible, that just lends any evidence to the credibility of the Bible, there's going to be people that want to say no because they don't want these things to be true. But like Kathleen Kenyon, who kind of opposed his views, but then later Bryant Wood in the 90s kind of confirmed John Garstang's view. And I'll give you some of the evidence that they found. So at Jericho, we all know the story. The Israelites circled the city 7 days in a row, and then when they blew their trumpets and shouted, the walls fell down. So at Jericho, the walls, if you're looking at it, it's like, think of a house, the walls fell outward. So if a nation was to conquest Jericho, and they're pushing in on these walls, the walls will fall inward, not outward. Point number two, at Jericho, the pots, they found all these different pots and, in the houses and the ruins that are still there, and they found that they were full of grain. If a nation was trying to conquest Jericho, trying to just take it over, there wouldn't be pots of grain left. They would, when a place was pillaged, they took everything. They took it all. But God instructed the Israelites to not take anything for themselves, just to destroy Jericho and destroy the altars and all that stuff. And that kind of supports that evidence. And it shows that this was a short conquest as well, because if the conquest was long and drawn out, then as you're fighting in war, you got to eat food. So all the pots and all the grain and all that would have been consumed as part of the war effort. And there's massive scorches and burn marks all over the walls in the city. And that just goes to show, even in the biblical evidence, God told them to burn the city. Because of the idolatry. So those are evidences that show, man, that that what happened to Jericho is the same thing that happened in the biblical narrative. That the story lends credibility that it is true. Another thing that I absolutely love is the dream stele of the Sphinx. And what a stele is, it's kind of like a commemorative plaque, just describing. All the cultures had things like this. They just described events. So let me give you a little background. Egyptians, they recorded all their rulers. They recorded the daily lives not the daily lives, but they recorded their history pretty well. But one thing that's going to come up handy is they don't record bad things that happen. They record the good things. That plays an important role. The dream stele of the Sphinx shows the lineage of the kings. Now, Thutmose III was most likely the pharaoh of the time of when Moses was young. And after Moses killed that Egyptian, Thutmose III would have most likely been that pharaoh who would have been seeking to kill Moses, which is why he stayed away until that pharaoh died. The next pharaoh, and who was the most likely candidate to be the pharaoh of the Exodus, was Amenhotep II. Why is he important? Because his son would have been Amenhotep III. And in the lineage of the different pharaohs of Egypt, something strange is there. From Amenhotep II, there's a jump, and Thutmose IV is the pharaoh of Egypt. Why is it interesting? Because Amenhotep II had a son who would have been Amenhotep III. But why was his son gone? Why was he not able to take the mantle of Pharaoh? Well, if you go back and you look at Exodus, there was these things called the 10 plagues. And the last plague, the death angel, killed the firstborn in any family who didn't have the blood of the lamb over the top and on the sides of the doors. So Amenhotep II had a firstborn son that would have been king, but he's not there. Can you say with 100% fact that the biblical narrative shows why that son would have been able to maintain power? You of course you can't say, oh yeah, 100% that was it, but I think it's very strange and very compelling that the evidence kind of lends it to show that what Exodus described happened is what happened. And I think that is just fascinating. Another one. You can see this in Isaiah, talking about Hezekiah's life. Now, Sennacherib was the king of Assyria, and he was leading the attack on Judah. This is in Isaiah chapter 36. Sennacherib is invading Judah. He takes a city that is very close to Jerusalem, named Lachish. And you can see it. He has this, I forget what they call it. It's the Lachish relief. And he has this massive painting, not a painting, but like a rock sculpture in his palace, detailing the taking of Lachish. Now, Assyria was primed and ready to take Jerusalem. But what does Sennacherib do? He sends a letter to Hezekiah and says, here's what I'm about to do. I'm about to come in. I'm about to ransack y'all, take everything you got, and I'm going to take y'all into exile. But Hezekiah takes that letter, takes it to God, essentially. And this is in Isaiah chapter 37, verse 14. It says, then Hezekiah took the letter from the hand of the messengers and read it, and went up to the house of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. He said, God, look at what's going on. We about to be taken over. Help us, please. Assyria should have taken Jerusalem. They have a massive army. They are primed and ready to go. But what happened? All of a sudden, they're just gone. Disappeared. Jerusalem is safe. Biblical account says that God sent an angel to wipe out that Assyrian army. Now, from a secular perspective, it's usually they usually say it was a disease that wiped them out, or it was just something. But really, they have no consensus. That they don't really know what happened. What I believe, y'all know me. Y'all watch my videos. You know what I believe happened. I believe that angel is what wiped them out. From a secular perspective, you really don't. There is really no consensus on what happened to the Assyrians as they try to take Jerusalem. Primed and ready to do it. But what happened? They just disappeared. Coincidence? I think not. The next thing, there was a lot of doubt about whether the Philistines were even a real people group, as with a lot of people groups that the Bible names. But there has been key archaeological discoveries that have shown that these people were real. They discovered a ancient trade route that showed that the Philistines had been living in this area past the point where they thought the Philistines started to really exist, and it lined up more with the biblical account of the Philistines. Coincidence again? I think not. And last thing, moving to the New Testament, I didn't give I could have given a lot more evidence for the New Testament, but I want to really choose to hit on this because this is pretty much all of Christianity right here. There is no credible biblical scholar, atheist or Christian, that says that Jesus didn't exist. You have a few fringe guys. I can name them you can count them on my hand how many there are that says Jesus was a myth. But no credible historical scholar, whether atheist, and I think that is key, or Christian, that says Jesus didn't exist. 2 points that they do agree on. They agree that Jesus was a preacher-teacher that lived in the area around Galilee, and he preached and taught. They agree on that point. And the second point, they agree that he died by crucifixion. Now, most of the atheist scholars don't believe in, the account that the gospel give about the miracles of Jesus and, the way he lived his life and all that. They don't agree with that stuff, but it's pretty cool that they do agree that he was a real person. He lived and he preached and taught in Jerusalem. They also don't believe of why he was crucified, but they believe that he was. And obviously they don't believe in the resurrection. But what I want to point you to, and I don't want to get into that here because it'll take too long, look up the minimal facts of the resurrection. And if you have a chance, I'm going to put a link of it up, and I ask you to watch this. Anybody who watches this video who wants more information about that. The Minimal Facts Support the Resurrection by Gary Habermas. And he goes through the resurrection, and man, that stuff is very compelling. It just shows how true the resurrection of Jesus is. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Like I said, I chose some of my ones that I know pretty well, but there's so much more. There's so much more, and there are discoveries happening constantly. Like the school that I'm at right now just made a big discovery. They can't really get into details about what that was yet until they, publicize it in Israel first. But you can rest assured, and this is what I tell people, that the biblical account is credible. It is. And the guy that commented on the last video, he said, looking at the miracles, the burning bush, the talking donkeys, all that stuff. The way I usually explain those things is, if you believe in a God that created the universe, that created the laws of physics, that created all that we know and see, if you believe in that God, then you can believe that he can make a donkey talk. You can believe that he made a bush burn, but it wasn't harmed. He controls the laws of physics. He can violate them anytime he wants to. He's not going to go against his nature, but he is the ruler of everything. And I know if you don't believe in God, that's a little harder push, but I want you to see it from that perspective. If you believe, if that God does exist, then he can do things like that. He can do miracles, because that's what a miracle is. It's a violation of what we would call natural law. But if you're the creator of that law, you can violate it anytime you want. So, but that's my video. If you like it, please like it. If you don't like it, tell me what's up so I can make these videos better. If you don't agree with the points, just if you leave a dislike, hey, tell me what's up. We can talk about it. And I always appreciate good discussion. Thank you guys. Love you guys. And I hope you all have a blessed day.